The rain had started before midnight and never really decided whether it wanted to become a storm. It just kept falling in thin, cold lines over the highway, turning the asphalt slick and black and reflective enough to catch every passing headlight like a blade. The kind of rain that made lonely places feel lonelier. The kind of rain that made bad decisions look softer from a distance. On nights like that, the road belonged to truckers, drifters, men with nowhere to be by morning, and Gabriel, grave, Mercer. Gabriel rode alone because he preferred it that way. His black Harley cut through the dark like something mechanical and patient, the engine low and steady beneath him, the wind pressing rain against his leather jacket until it looked almost polished. He was 38 years old, broad-shouldered, scarred in places polite company didn't ask about, and quiet in the way that made strangers invent stories about him to explain their discomfort. The patch on the back of his cut read Hell's Angels, and in most towns that was enough to make gas station attendants turn careful and drunks remember they had somewhere else to be. Gabriel never complained about that. Distance made life easier. Distance kept people from asking questions. Distance meant a man could ride half the night with his own ghosts and not have to pretend they'd left him years ago. He was 40 miles from Black Hollow and another 30 from the clubhouse when he saw her. At first it was just movement at the edge of his headlight beam. Something pale near the shoulder of the road, too small to be a deer, too wrong to be trash. Gabriel's hand tightened on the throttle for half a second before instinct won over caution and he eased off. The bike slowed with a low growl. His headlight swung wider over the ditch and caught the shape fully this time, a young woman stumbling out of the tree line barefoot on one side, soaked through, mud on her jeans, one hand pressed to her ribs like she was trying to hold herself together. She didn't see him right away. Her face was turned over her shoulder toward the woods, toward whatever she had run from. Then the Harley's engine reached her properly and she spun, blinded by the light, one arm coming up to shield her face. Gabriel brought the bike to a stop on the shoulder and killed the engine. Silence fell hard. Not true silence. Rain still hissed against leaves, water still dripped from pine branches, distant thunder still rolled somewhere too far away to matter, but silence enough that he could hear her breathing from 10 feet off. It was ragged, uneven, panicked. The kind of breathing that meant this wasn't some drunk college girl lost after a bad party. This was fear with muscle memory. For one long second neither of them moved. Then she took 2 stumbling steps toward him, stopped like she wasn't sure whether she'd just made the worst mistake of her life, and whispered, "They won't stop until they find me. Please." It was a strange first sentence. Most people ask for help directly. Call the police. I'm hurt. I need a ride. This girl came out of the trees looking hunted and chose a sentence that sounded less like a request than a warning. Gabriel swung one boot down and got off the bike. He did it slowly on purpose. Fast movements frightened desperate people. Frightened people did stupid things. She looked young. Early 20s at most. Her blonde hair, darkened by rain, clung to her face and neck. Her sweatshirt, gray once, maybe, though now soaked nearly black, hung crooked over one shoulder, stretched at the collar as if someone had grabbed it hard enough to tear the seam. Her bottom lip was split. There was blood at one knee, not fresh enough to be from this exact second but recent enough to matter. More telling than any of that were her eyes. She kept looking past him. Not at the bike. Not at the patch on his back. Past him, to the road behind, to the woods, to the dark shapes between trees. Like danger hadn't ended with reaching him. Like it might still come spilling out after her any second. Gabriel took in all of it before he spoke. Who's looking? Her throat moved. She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head once too fast. Please, she said again, and this time the word cracked open in the middle. Please don't leave. Gabriel's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes sharpened. He hadn't said he was leaving. Which meant she was hearing older footsteps in his silence. He glanced once toward the woods. No headlights cutting through the trees. No voices. No engine noise nearby. But that didn't mean much. Men hunting someone didn't always use roads once they got close. Name, he said. She stared at him a beat like she hadn't expected a question that simple. What? Your name. A pause. Then, Mia. Gabriel nodded once. Mia what? Another pause. Mia Carter. He let that sit. Real? She looked at him then, properly, and for the first time took him in, the beard gone rough with rain, the old scar along one cheek, the cut over the leather, the motorcycle, the size of him. Whatever conclusion she came to, she still answered. Yes. Good enough for now. You hurt? He asked. I don't know. That answer was honest enough to matter. He stepped closer, just enough to see the tremor in her hands more clearly. She flinched, but didn't back away. That meant something too. People who've been running long enough eventually choose the danger they can see over the danger they can't. Gabriel's voice stayed even. Anyone with you? No. Anyone know where you are? No. That's a problem. A broken, bitter laugh escaped her. I know. Rain gathered at the line of her jaw and dropped to the gravel. Gabriel glanced once more toward the woods. What did you do? He asked it flatly, without accusation, because there were always possibilities. Maybe she'd stolen from the wrong man. Maybe she'd run from a wreck. Maybe she was bait for some ugly little roadside setup. People were inventive when desperation met cruelty. Mia looked stunned by the question, then offended, then too tired to be either. Nothing. He waited. Nothing, she repeated, harsher this time. That's the whole point. Gabriel studied her face and found no performance there. Exhaustion, terror, rain, pain. No theater. Then why are they after you? Her lower lip trembled once before she pressed it still with visible effort. Because I heard something I wasn't supposed to. He didn't react outwardly, but inside, the shape of the night changed. Who are they? My boyfriend, she whispered. And his brother. There it was. Not simpler, but more familiar than the other options. Men. Ownership. Violence. Family making itself ugly in private and then dragging it into public when control slipped. Gabriel had seen enough versions of that story to know how it ended if no one interrupted. Usually badly. Sometimes permanently. Ex-boyfriend, he asked. She looked confused for 1 second, then almost laughed. If I live long enough, yeah. That got the ghost of a smile out of him, quick and gone. How long you been running? Since before dark. From where? Cabin near Red Elk Road. He knew the area. Remote. Hunting cabins, logging trails, the kind of place where people went when they wanted not to be overheard. How far'd you come? I don't know. I ran through the creek. I lost my shoe in the mud. I kept hearing them behind me, then not hearing them, which was worse, and then I saw the road and your light and, her voice gave out. Gabriel let the silence hold. Sometimes if you didn't rush a frightened person, the truth came out cleaner. It did now. They know this road, she said quietly. They'll check it. They'll check every pull-off. They won't stop until they find me. She looked at him then with a kind of naked desperation that was almost harder to withstand than panic. Please. He exhaled slowly through his nose. He should have called it in. Should have kept distance, called county, maybe taken her to a gas station with cameras and let uniforms sort the rest. That was what a smarter man would have done. That was what a less tired one might have done. But Gabriel knew this county. Knew which deputies drank with which families, knew how fast information traveled when the wrong name was involved, knew that frightened women often got returned to danger through paperwork that called itself process. Phone? He asked. She shook her head. He took mine. Wallet? Gone. Anything on you? She hesitated, then reached into the front pocket of the sweatshirt and pulled out a folded envelope wrapped in a zip-top sandwich bag. Even through the rain, she had kept that dry. Interesting. She held it like it might burn through her hand. Just this. Gabriel didn't take it yet. What is it? I don't know exactly. That sounded like a lie until she rushed on. I mean, I know what it is physically. It's papers. Maybe cash. Maybe copies of something. I grabbed it because I heard them say they had to find it before I got away. Her breath hitched. I think it matters more than I do. Gabriel looked at the bag. Then at her face. Then toward the woods again. There was no time for patient disentangling. Whatever this was, if the men hunting her valued it enough, the road wasn't going to stay empty forever. Get on, he said. She blinked rain out of her eyes. What? He jerked his chin toward the bike. Get on. I can't, I don't have a helmet. Gabriel walked back to the Harley, popped open the rear compartment, and pulled out a spare half-shell helmet. He held it out. Now you do. She stared at the helmet as if it were a test she didn't understand. You're taking me. You got a better idea? No, she looked toward the woods again and the fear came roaring back over whatever disbelief had started. Somewhere out there, a branch cracked. Or maybe it was just water dropping from a heavy limb. Either way, she flinched hard enough that answer became irrelevant. Gabriel stepped closer and set the helmet into her hands. Mia. She looked up. Whatever's back there, he said, voice low and flat and impossible to misunderstand, decide whether you're more afraid of that or of me. Quickly. It was a cruel sentence. Also a fair one. She swallowed and jammed the helmet on with shaking fingers. He tightened the strap himself because she was too cold to manage it. Her skin was freezing where his knuckles brushed her jaw. Hold on when we move, he said. Don't argue. Don't lean wrong in turns. If I tell you to get off and run, you run where I point. Understand? She nodded once. Good. He swung onto the bike and kicked the engine alive. The Harley roared in the quiet. Mia climbed on behind him clumsily, almost slipping on the wet foot peg. For one awful second he thought she'd fall before they even started. Then her hands found his jacket. Not his waist. The leather just above it, fists bunching tight. Too tentative. Properly, he said over the engine. If you fall off because you're trying to be polite, that's on you. Her arms went around him all at once, shockingly tight. There. Better. He rolled the bike back onto the shoulder, checked the mirrors, and just as he was about to open the throttle, two figures burst from the tree lean exactly where she had. Headlight. Rain. Distance. Enough for only a snapshot. One broad-shouldered. One leaner. One of them shouted something and started forward. Gabriel didn't wait to hear the words. He dropped the clutch and the Harley launched into the wet dark. Mia ducked instinctively against his back as the road unspooled under them. He took the first curve fast, then faster, choosing speed over subtlety because there was no point pretending now. Behind them, no headlights appeared immediately. That didn't mean safety. It meant delay. And delay was something a smart man used before it expired. 10 miles north sat a truck stop full of cameras, bad coffee, and enough witnesses to complicate any simple snatch attempt. 15 miles west sat County Line and a town whose sheriff hated outsiders in a way that could cut either direction depending on what name got there first. 40 minutes southeast sat the clubhouse, and while Gabriel knew half a dozen brothers who would wake ugly and loyal for one call, he wasn't ready to make the night bigger unless he had to. Not yet. Mia's voice came small and muffled against his shoulder over the wind. Where are we going? He kept his eyes on the road. Not back there. That's not an answer. Tonight it is. She went quiet after that. Good. Silence on a bike wasn't always peaceful, but it was useful. Gabriel rode by instinct and memory, taking county roads where he could, avoiding the obvious main strips. Every few minutes he checked the mirror. Nothing. Then, 20 minutes in, something. Headlights. Far back. One set. Too steady. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. He took a right onto an old service road that cut through a stand of black pines and watched the mirror again. The headlights overshot the turn, vanished, then reappeared a minute later. Not coincidence. He felt Mia tense before she even saw it. They found us. Maybe. That's them. Gabriel didn't waste breath answering. He opened the throttle. The road narrowed, rougher now, rainwater gathering in the ruts. The bike handled it fine. The car behind them, truck maybe, by the height of the lights, wouldn't handle it nearly as smoothly, but it didn't have to. It just had to keep up. Gabriel's mind moved through options the way old fighters move through exits in a room. 1. Lose them in the timber roads and hope they didn't know the terrain. Bad bet. 2. Reach the truck stop, cameras, people, phones, force this ugly thing into public. Better. 3. Call in club support and make the problem regret existing. Best, maybe, but escalatory. And once you called brothers into a thing, the thing stopped being small forever. He rode another mile and made the decision. With one hand, steady on the bars, he hit the Bluetooth tab inside his helmet and called Leon. Leon picked up on the second ring because of course he did. You dead? Working on avoiding it. Leon was quiet one beat. Talk. Gabriel gave him the route, the truck behind, the girl, the likely domestic with extras, and ended with, need 2 men at Parker's truck stop in 10. Maybe more. Leon didn't ask questions. Good brother. Done. Quietly. Leon snorted. You called the wrong people for quietly. The line cut. Mia had heard enough through proximity to realize one thing. You called people. Yeah. Who? Insurance. That almost got a laugh out of her, strangled and disbelieving, but fear swallowed it before it could become anything. The truck behind them gained on the straightaways and lost on the curves. Whoever drove it had skill or stupidity enough to keep pushing in rain. Gabriel respected either one just enough to be annoyed. The Parker's sign finally appeared ahead through the dark, tall, ugly, blessedly bright. Sodium lot lights. 2 semis parked nose out. A diner annex on one side. Fuel islands mostly empty at this hour. Good. Witnesses without crowd. He swung the bike hard into the lot and cut between pumps instead of parking straight out front. The truck behind followed. So yes. Them. Gabriel stopped near the diner doors and killed the engine before the Harley had fully settled. Off. Mia moved too slowly. Shock and wind had stiffened her. He helped her down, kept one hand on her elbow only long enough to steady, then put her behind him and turned toward the lot entrance just as the truck came in hot and braked crooked across 2 spaces. Doors opened. Not 2 men. 3. That changed things again. The broad-shouldered one from the woods stepped out first. Younger than Gabriel first guessed. Mid-30s. Gym-built, expensive boots already muddy. The leaner one came around the passenger side. The third stayed near the truck, heavy and watchful. Mia made a sound behind Gabriel that wasn't quite a word. That's him. Gabriel didn't ask which. The broad-shouldered one spread his hands like this could still be social. Mia. Gabriel heard the ownership in one name and disliked him immediately. You need to come on home. Gabriel didn't move. She's standing right there. Ask her. The man's eyes finally fixed on Gabriel properly. They went to the patch and stayed there a second too long. This doesn't concern you. Gabriel let the line pass through him like stale smoke. Everything in my direction concerns me. The leaner one spoke next, voice smoother, better educated, somehow more unpleasant. She's upset. Family issue. We appreciate the ride. Gabriel's expression stayed flat. You can appreciate it from farther away. Rain ticked softly against the fuel pump canopy. One of the truckers by the diner window had definitely noticed now. Good. Let him. Mia's fingers caught in the back of Gabriel's wet jacket again. They won't stop, she whispered. The broad-shouldered man heard enough to smile without humor. No. We won't. Then, to Gabriel, you really want to make this difficult? Gabriel thought of all the men who asked that as if difficulty were a private invention of theirs. I want you to leave. The smile vanished. That's not happening. Headlights swung into the lot then from the opposite side. 2 motorcycles. Low. Loud. Familiar. Leon arrived with Cutter riding beside him, both in cuts dark with rain, both wearing the sort of expressions that made late-night strangers decide to be somewhere else. Leon took one look at the lineup and let out a delighted breath. Ah, he said, parking beside Gabriel. One of those nights. Cutter killed his bike and stepped off in one smooth motion. Which one needs convincing? The leaner man near the truck recalculated visibly. Good. Gabriel almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The broad-shouldered one didn't step back, though. Instead he looked directly at Mia over Gabriel's shoulder. You think they can protect you? That was the wrong question at the wrong moment. Because Mia, wet and shaking and exhausted, did something Gabriel would remember long after the rest blurred. She stepped out just enough to be seen and answered, more than you ever did. Silence hit like a dropped gate. The man's face changed. Not anger first. Injury. As if defiance from a woman was the deepest insult he knew. Then the anger came. You stupid, he started forward. Cutter moved before Gabriel had to. One hand to the chest. One shove. Efficient. The man hit the wet hood of the truck and stopped there, not by choice. Leon smiled at the other two. Now we're all awake. Everything after that happened too fast for tidy memory. The heavy one by the truck reached inside his jacket. Gabriel saw it and shouted once. Leon was already moving. Not a gun, as it turned out. Tire iron. Bad enough. Cutter twisted the broad-shouldered man off balance. Gabriel hit the leaner one in the stomach before he could circle toward Mia. Mud, rain, fists, chrome light, a trucker yelling for someone to call state patrol. Mia backed against the diner wall with both hands over her mouth trying not to scream because screaming felt too much like giving them what they wanted. The fight was brief because real fights between men who know how to end them usually are. Cutter bloodied the broad one. Leon disarmed the heavy one and put him face first onto the wet pavement. Gabriel split the leaner one's lip and dropped him with a hook that emptied all the careful language out of his face. Then came sirens. Because small mercies still existed. State patrol this time, not county, which improved the odds. Blue-red lights washed the lot, turned rain into electric confetti, and gave everyone one last chance to make smarter choices. The 3 men from the truck made none. By the time cuffs clicked, one trooper had already pulled Mia aside beneath the awning, away from all of them, and asked the right first question. Not what did you do? Not who started it. Just, are you in danger? Gabriel watched from 10 feet off as Mia closed her eyes once and finally said, yes. That was the first honest piece of law the night had earned. And it was only the beginning. The state trooper's name was Alvarez, and she had the kind of face that suggested life had long ago burned out any appetite for nonsense. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled tight at the nape, rain dripping from the brim of her campaign hat, eyes steady in the way eyes get when they've seen too many liars and learned not to rush the ones telling the truth. She stood with Mia beneath the truck stop awning while the other officers separated the men from the pickup, checked IDs, logged weapons, and tried not to stare too obviously at the three patched bikers standing in the rain like they had been carved there. Gabriel kept his distance because Alvarez had asked him to, and because sometimes the best thing a man could do for a frightened woman was remove the gravity of his sighs from her choices. Still, he watched. Of course he watched. Mia had one of those paper-stiff thermal blankets around her shoulders now, the silver kind that made everyone look like a survivor in an emergency brochure. Her wet hair clung to her cheeks. One of the truck stop waitresses had brought out coffee she hadn't touched. Alvarez spoke low, not soft, and every few minutes Mia answered with the same visible effort it took her to keep breathing evenly. Good. That meant the trooper wasn't letting her disappear inside yes or no answers. That meant details were being dragged into the light where men like the ones in cuffs hated them most. Leon wandered over under the pretense of stretching his shoulder and murmured, "You pick interesting errands." Gabriel didn't look at him. "Shut up." Leon glanced toward Mia and then at the troopers moving around the truck. "Those boys aren't random." "No." "You know them?" "No." Cutter, standing on Gabriel's other side, wiped rain from his beard and said, "But she does." Gabriel nodded once. That was the shape of it. The broad-shouldered one, the boyfriend, presumably, had stopped talking as soon as the cuffs went on. The leaner one tried twice to say the whole thing was a misunderstanding and had earned only the expression on Alvarez's face reserved for men who mistook a badge for gullibility. The heavy one with the tire iron kept looking at Mia with the strange, simmering hatred of hired muscle whose evening had been complicated by a woman refusing her role in his employer's story. Gabriel filed all of it away. Trouble had layers, and this one wasn't done unfolding. 20 minutes later Alvarez approached him with a yellow legal pad speckled by rain and the sort of measured pace that told him she had already made 3 separate judgments and was now testing a 4th. "Mr. Mercer." "Trooper." She looked him over once, taking in the split knuckle, the damp cut, the road grit. "You mind telling me why a Hell's Angel happened to be the first friendly face she ran into tonight?" Gabriel almost smiled. "Friendly's generous." Alvarez did not smile back. "Work with me." He gave her the short version. Highway shoulder. Girl in the rain. The woods. The envelope. The truck following. Parkers. The men making the wrong choices. He kept his voice flat and his answers clean. No swagger. No omitting what didn't help him. Alvarez listened the way good cops and bad gamblers listened, still on the outside, moving fast on the inside. When he finished, she looked toward Mia. "She says she took something from the cabin." Gabriel said nothing. Alvarez's eyes returned to him. "She also says if the men in that truck are released before daylight, she won't live long enough to testify properly." Sounds like she's thought about it. "That's what worries me." A pause. Rain hissed on the asphalt beyond the canopy. The truckers in the diner windows had gone back to eating but still looked up every few bites like they were checking whether reality had changed its mind. Alvarez lowered her voice. "If I put her in county protective holding tonight, and if the wrong deputy makes the wrong call, that fear becomes fact." Gabriel held her gaze. "Yeah. You got somewhere she can disappear for 12 hours while I wake up the right people?" He didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't know. Because saying yes made things official in a way the road and the rain hadn't yet. "Yeah," he said at last. Alvarez gave one slow nod, like she had expected that. "Then here's how this goes. They're not walking tonight. I've got assault, unlawful weapon possession, outstanding question marks on at least one of them, and enough probable cause to make paperwork heavy. But heavy isn't permanent. If she's got something valuable, they have friends. Money. Phones. You understand me. I do. Good. She tore one sheet from the legal pad, wrote a number, and handed it to him. If anybody even breathes wrong in your direction, you call that. Directly. Gabriel took the paper. You trust me with it? Alvarez looked him dead on. No. I trust what I saw happen when she said no and they ignored it. Fair enough. She stepped away before the silence got awkward, and Gabriel slid the paper into the inside pocket of his cut. When he looked over again, Mia was watching him. Not openly. Through the edge of the thermal blanket, through hair still damp against her face, through the expression of someone trying to understand whether the road had delivered her to safety or merely a more complicated form of danger. He gave her the smallest nod he could without making it performance. You're still here. She looked down almost immediately, but something in her shoulders lowered by half an inch. Enough to matter. They left Parker's just before dawn in a loose convoy because Alvarez insisted and Leon, to his own delight, immediately began referring to it as state-sanctioned paranoia. Gabriel rode in front. Cutter took rear. Leon floated the flank because he liked drama and because he was useful where roads forked into options. Mia rode behind Gabriel again, this time with dry socks, borrowed boots from the truck stops lost and found, and Joe's flannel still wrapped around her under the borrowed riding jacket Leon had produced from one of the saddlebags like a magician who specialized in road grime. She held on with less panic now. Not relaxed, never that, but present enough to notice the route. Good. People forced into hiding should always know where the turns are. The sky turned slowly from black to a washed-out graphite over the hills. Rain thinned. The world smelled of wet pine and diesel and cold earth rising. They took the old county road west, then broke south along a logging route half the GPS systems in the state had forgotten. By the time Gabriel rolled through the gate at Joe's place again, the day had started without becoming morning properly. Everything looked tired. The dogs barked once from inside and then recognized the engine pattern and gave up. Joe opened the front door wearing yesterday's patience and fresh coffee. She saw the convoy, saw Mia climbing down, saw Alvarez's number paper sticking half out of Gabriel's pocket because he had gotten sloppy with fatigue, and said, I knew I should have become a dentist. Leon parked and stretched. Too late now. Joe ignored him and fixed her eyes on Mia. Inside. Shoes off. Truth on the table this time. Mia looked like she might argue from sheer lack of remaining strength, then simply nodded and followed. Inside, the kitchen became a command center by accident the way certain kitchens always do when trouble is forced to sit down and explain itself. Joe put on more coffee. Cutter checked every window and exterior lock without being asked. Leon dragged 2 extra chairs in from the porch because every crisis eventually discovered furniture as part of its logistics. Gabriel set the envelope and the thermal blanket on the table while Mia stood there with the hard drive in one hand and the posture of someone trying to decide how much of her life could be spoken aloud before it turned poisonous again. Joe pointed at the chair. Sit before you fall down and make me care in a louder voice. Mia sat. Her hands stayed wrapped around the drive. Gabriel took the seat across from her. Leon lounged against the counter with the insincere looseness of a man who could become very serious in under a heartbeat. Cutter remained by the mudroom door because some people are most comfortable guarding thresholds even when no one asked them to. Joe placed a fresh mug in front of Mia and then folded her own arms. Start with the real name if you'd be so kind. Mia stared at the mug for 3 seconds, then said, Mia Carter. Joe nodded. Good. That already sounds less like a bad witness statement. Gabriel said, the cabin. Mia looked at him. What? Start there. Her throat worked. She set the hard drive down carefully, like setting down a live thing. Daniel brought me there 3 weeks ago. Leon's brows rose. Voluntarily. Mia let out a laugh without humor. At the beginning? Sure. The room quieted. She kept her eyes on the coffee as if heat alone could hold her together. He said we needed time away. Said I'd been stressed. Said the city was getting in my head. He always said things like that when he wanted to move me somewhere quieter. Move you away from who? Joe asked. Anyone who still remembered me before him. That landed hard. Gabriel said nothing, but he watched the way Mia's fingers pressed against the mug, memorizing its shape instead of her own. Daniel wasn't always. She began, then stopped and shook her head. That's not true. He probably was. I just met the polished version first. She finally looked up. He worked private security contracts at first. Or that's what I thought. Executive protection. Transport. Cash jobs for rich men who liked pretending danger made them interesting. He was good at being the calmest person in a room. Good enough that people mistook it for safety. Leon muttered, classic. Mia nodded once. When Mara started asking questions, he got interested in me. That should have told me everything. Gabriel leaned back slightly. Your sister worked near him. Through a shell company. Logistics, manifests, route compliance. She found inconsistencies, names that changed but invoices didn't, shipments rerouted through private strips that didn't match the paperwork. She told me she thought it was drugs first. Mia swallowed. Then she found photos. Cutter's face didn't change, but one of his hands tightened where it rested on the doorframe. Joe sat down now, slowly, all humor gone. And she copied the files. A little at a time. She didn't trust where she worked anymore. She didn't trust her boss. She definitely didn't trust Daniel once she realized his name kept turning up adjacent to things it shouldn't. She said if she just disappeared with everything, they'd know. So she made copies. Insurance. Mia tapped the hard drive lightly. This was the last one. Gabriel asked the next question because it had to be asked. Why mail it to you? Mia's answer came quietly. Because by then she thought she was already dead. Silence followed that one because what do you add to a sentence like that except respect for how much fear it must have taken to say it plain. Finally Joe said, the passports. Mia nodded toward the tote bag by the wall. Mara's and mine. She made me get one 6 months ago. Said if she ever used the phrase summer storm in a text, I had to go. Gabriel filed the phrase away. She used it. The day before they said she overdosed. Mia's voice broke on the last word, but she kept going, which told him she had run out of room for collapse and was using anger instead. I got to the apartment too late. Her neighbor said men had already been there. The police told me there was nothing suspicious. Daniel held me while I cried and told me not to ask questions that would only hurt me. The kitchen seemed to contract around that line. Joe closed her eyes once. Leon's mouth flattened. Gabriel said, and then he brought you to the cabin. Not immediately. First he played grieving boyfriend. Helpful. Protective. Patient. Then a week later I found him in our kitchen at 3 a.m. talking to his brother about the drive. Not the hard drive. The drive. Like they didn't know whether Mara had hidden it or mailed it or left it with someone. They said my name. They said if I knew and ran, I'd make things worse. She looked at Gabriel directly now. That's when I understood they hadn't just been around it. They were in it. Leon lifted his head from the counter. And the brother. Tyler. Gabriel frowned. Not the man at Parker's. No. Daniel's actual brother is Tyler. The one from the station was someone else. Hired maybe. I don't know all the names. Daniel didn't tell me things anymore once he realized I listened too well. Gabriel let the pieces settle. More people. Larger operation. The men at Parker's were retrieval, not family. That matched the way they moved. Mia continued, words coming easier now that momentum had taken over. I played along for 4 more days. I said all the right things. I cried at the right moments. I let him think fear had made me simple. Then I found the floor safe in the cabin office because Tyler was sloppy when he was drinking. The drive was there with cash and passports. They must have found Mara's apartment after she mailed it and realized too late where it had gone. And you ran. As soon as Daniel and Tyler took the truck into town for supplies. I thought I had an hour. They were back in 20 minutes because Tyler forgot his phone. Daniel saw the floor safe open before he saw me. I heard him shout and I just. She spread one hand helplessly. I ran. Her fingers touched the bruise at her jaw unconsciously. Gabriel noticed. So did Joe. The marks, Joe said. Mia went still. He caught me once. By the creek. Before dark. I got away because Tyler saw headlights on the service road and they didn't want witnesses. Leon swore quietly. And you still made the highway. Barely. She looked at Gabriel then with an expression he didn't know how to wear well, gratitude without softness, almost reverence but too exhausted to decorate itself. Then I saw your light. Gabriel looked away first. Not because he couldn't handle gratitude. Because he never knew where to put it. Cutter spoke for the first time in several minutes. If they know the drive was mailed to her and not turned over, they'll assume backup copies. There aren't any, Mia said immediately. Not that I know of. Cutter nodded, unimpressed by hope. Doesn't matter. Men like this don't stop at certainty. They stop at total control. Gabriel leaned back and linked the visible names. Daniel. Tyler. Hired retrieval men. Shell company. Private strips. Trafficking routes. Dead sister. County that might leak. State trooper who understood enough to be useful but not enough yet to burn the whole thing down before breakfast. The room needed a plan. We move before noon, he said. Joe looked up. Where? Clubhouse won't work. Leon made a face. Too obvious. Gabriel nodded. Tyler or whoever's over them will look there first once they figure out what patch she ran into. Mia went pale at the reminder that his patch was its own kind of map. Then where? Gabriel looked at Cutter. Cutter already knew. Redding Farm. Joe frowned. Your old man's place. Nobody uses it. Exactly why it works, Leon said, straightening. Only downside is the cell service sucks and the ghosts are rude. Joe ignored him. If you put her there, you're making this official. Gabriel met her eyes. It already is. Joe held his gaze one beat longer, then nodded once. Then we feed her first. Mia blinked, startled by the turn. Joe stood, reached into the pantry, and started pulling out bread, soup, fruit, the practical offerings of someone who understood that revolutions and witness statements alike collapse faster on an empty stomach. Nobody makes good decisions hungry. That includes outlaw philosophy. Leon grinned. I keep saying that. You keep saying lots of things. That doesn't make them useful. As Joe worked, Gabriel stepped onto the back porch with Leon and Cutter. Rain had finally slowed to mist. The fields beyond the tree line were waking into a washed-out silver dawn. Leon lit a cigarette, remembered Joe's rules, sighed, and put it behind his ear instead. This bigger than retrieval, he said. Gabriel nodded. Yeah. You calling Bishop? At the name, Cutter's eyes flicked over. Bishop ran regional for 3 chapters and preferred being woken with good reasons and complete information. Gabriel had both now. Soon. Leon studied him. Soon means you're thinking about what happens after the drive gets handed over. Gabriel looked out over the wet field. Drive gets handed to the wrong office, it vanishes. Hand it to the right one, people die before indictments. We need names tied to places before we give anybody the map. Leon rubbed at his beard. You trust Hensley? Enough. That's not trust. It's what I've got. Cutter finally spoke. If we're doing this, we do it fast. These men lose sleep, they make mistakes. The first 24 hours are where good hunters become sloppy. Gabriel nodded once. Which is why Mia gets nowhere near the drive unless I say so. Leon glanced through the kitchen window at the girl sitting with Joe's mug in both hands like warmth itself was a contract she didn't know how to sign. You know what this looks like, right? Gabriel's eyes stayed on the field. Yeah. No, I mean to them. To whoever's above Daniel. A witness is one problem. A witness protected by us is another. You're making yourself visible in a thing that'll want invisibility more than blood. Gabriel almost smiled. Then they should have left her in the woods. Leon let out a breath that might have been amusement if a man were allowed to admire trouble while standing too close to it. There he is. Back inside, Mia ate because Joe made refusing impossible. Halfway through the second bowl of soup, sleep tried to drag her sideways right there at the table. Gabriel stepped back just in time to see it. He glanced at Joe. 20 minutes. Then we move. Joe nodded. She'll have 30 or I'll break your arm myself. You couldn't in your current slippers. Try me. Mia watched this exchange with the baffled expression of someone who had not realized people could threaten one another and mean safety. Gabriel saw it and said, upstairs. Now. Sleep while you can. She almost argued from reflex, then thought better of it and rose carefully. At the foot of the stairs she stopped and turned back. If they come here, Gabriel cut the sentence cleanly. They won't get past the gate. You don't know that. He held her gaze. I do. She looked at him a second longer, as if trying to decide whether his certainty was arrogance or a structure she could stand beneath. Then she nodded once and disappeared upstairs. An hour later, Bishop arrived in a mud-splashed pickup instead of his usual bike, which told Gabriel how seriously the man took bad weather and bad news in combination. He came through the kitchen door carrying wet air and impatience. Big man. Silver beard. Eyes sharp enough to shave with. He looked at Leon first, then Cutter, then Joe, and finally at Gabriel. I was told not to bring the chapter, he said. You were told right. So either you've gone soft or this is worse than it sounds. Gabriel handed him the drive. Bishop weighed it in his palm like it might confess through gravity. Ah, he said. Worse. Mia came down the stairs halfway through that conversation and stopped cold when she saw him. Bishop took one look at her face and all the sarcasm left his. You the sister? She nodded. Sit, he said. And tell me what kind of men I'm about to become unpopular with. So she did. Again. Cleaner this time. Names. Dates. The cabin. Mara. Daniel. Tyler. She no longer cried when she said the word overdose. Good. Grief had started turning into direction. Bishop listened with his hands folded over the drive and the expression of a man comparing what he heard to maps already in his head. When she finished, he asked only 3 questions. Had Mara ever mentioned border routes, had Daniel used the name Voss anywhere, and did Tyler limp slightly on the left when tired or drunk? Mia answered yes, yes, and yes. Bishop nodded once like puzzle pieces were finally agreeing to be puzzle pieces. I know who owns the shell, he said. The room changed. Gabriel leaned forward. You sure? Sure enough. Bishop looked at Mia. Your sister stumbled into a route network people have been trying to pin for 3 years. Private strips, temporary labor movement, women and kids disappearing into compliance farms and cash circuits. Ugly money. Quiet money. Men in ties when daylight hits, men with rifles when it doesn't. Mia had gone very still. Daniel? Bishop's mouth hardened. Middle management cruelty with delusions of size. Dangerous enough if he's cornered, but not the top. Tyler either. Leon swore softly. Cutter looked toward the window, already measuring the size of the thing beyond it. Gabriel asked the question that mattered. What now? Bishop set the drive on the table. Now we stop pretending this is only about hiding a witness. He looked at Mia. You carry the one thing that can prove pattern instead of isolated crimes. That makes you leverage. It also makes you bait if we're careless. Mia's fingers curled against her knees. I'm not going back in a cage. Bishop's gaze didn't soften, but it did settle. Then don't. He looked at Gabriel. Move her to Redding Farm. No phones except clean ones. No digital footprint. I'll bring 2 men you trust, not 2 men who want excitement. Leon goes north and stirs mud with the local rumors. Cutter stays on the road grid. Joe. He turned. You're the only one here with sense. Pack what she needs and burn what she touched if you think they'll sweep for scent or trace. Joe raised an eyebrow. Romantic. Bishop ignored her. I'll go see Hensley myself. State Task Force gets this only when I say the names and not before. If county leaks, I want to know which throat to squeeze. Gabriel nodded once. The plan had shape now. Dangerous shape, but shape all the same. Mia looked from one face to the next and understood, maybe for the first time, that the sentence she whispered on the road had set machinery in motion far beyond one biker and one ride. Good machinery, maybe. Necessary. But large enough now that no one could mistake this for rescue alone. This was war deciding whether it needed to wake up fully. She should have been terrified by that. Part of her was. But another part, the part that had survived Mara's warning, the woods, the station, the truck stop, the first telling, felt something else trying to live under the fear. Not hope yet. Hope was too clean a word for something this dangerous. Maybe belief. Belief that the men hunting her had finally reached a door that would not open just because they hit it hard. Gabriel stood. We leave in 15. Mia looked at him. Just like that. Just like that. And if they find the farm? He pulled on his gloves one finger at a time. Then they'll have picked the wrong door too. Outside, the mist lifted enough to reveal the long road beyond the trees. Empty for now. Not for always. Inside, Joe was already packing food, spare clothes, bandages, dog-eared maps, and the hard practical kindness of women who don't mistake tenderness for weakness. Leon was on his second call and first lie of the day, which meant useful things were already spreading in the wrong directions to protect the right one. Cutter checked the bolts in the mudroom as if doors personally offended him by failing over time. Bishop stood at the sink looking out over the wet fields with the hard face of a man who had just recognized an old enemy wearing a newer shirt. And Mia Carter, who had spent the last 12 hours running from men who would not stop until they found her, sat in the middle of that kitchen and felt the axis of her life tilt in a way there might be no return from. Good, maybe. Terrible too. Real certainly. When Gabriel came around the table and set a small burner phone in front of her, she looked up. What's this? For if we get separated. Her throat tightened instantly. Are we going to? He didn't lie. Not if I can help it. That answer, more than any promise, settled her. Because promises had been used like rope on her for too long. Plain truth felt safer. She took the phone. He nodded once. Good. Finish the coffee. We're burning daylight. And somewhere far beyond the wet fields, beyond the county roads and cabins and stations and truck stops and names that were only beginning to matter, the men who had killed her sister were waking to find out the girl they meant to bury in silence had made it to people who did not frighten easy. The road to Redding Farm didn't exist on most maps anymore, and the few that still remembered it drew it as a suggestion rather than a promise. Gabriel preferred it that way. Forgotten roads didn't ask questions. Forgotten places didn't host accidents. The convoy broke apart 10 miles out, just as Bishop had ordered. Leon peeled north to make noise where it didn't matter. Cutter took the long loop through the timber roads to watch for tails. Gabriel kept Mia with him, the Harley eating distance in a low, steady rhythm that let him feel the road instead of fighting it. The sky stayed dull and undecided, the kind of gray that made time slip without marking it. Mia held on behind him, tighter in the straightaways, more balanced in the curves now that her body had learned the bike's language. She didn't speak over the engine. Good. Words weren't useful at speed. What mattered was awareness, mirrors, sound, instinct, and Gabriel felt all three shift in his favor the farther they moved from the highway grid. By the time the narrow cut appeared, a break in the brush that looked like a mistake until you knew what to look for, he had already decided there was no tail worth worrying about. Not yet. He turned in without signaling, rolled past the sagging gate, and followed the overgrown track between pines that leaned close enough to brush his shoulders if he drifted an inch wrong. The farmhouse revealed itself in pieces, first the roofline, then the broken fence, then the porch that had once held summer chairs and now held nothing but wind. Redding Farm. Empty long enough to forget it had ever been owned, but not long enough to collapse. The kind of place that waited. Gabriel killed the engine in the yard and let the silence settle before he moved. Mia didn't get off immediately. She sat there with her hands still around him, as if the absence of vibration had unbalanced her more than the ride itself. "We're here," he said. She let go slowly and climbed down, boots sinking slightly into the damp dirt. She looked at the house, at the barn sagging off to one side, at the line of trees that hemmed everything in like a quiet warning. No one comes here. No one who wants to be seen. That didn't exactly comfort her, but she nodded anyway. Gabriel walked the perimeter first, because that was how you stayed alive in places like this. Doors. Windows. Tracks. Nothing fresh except their own. Good. He returned to find Mia standing in the yard with the small bag Joe had packed slung over her shoulder, the hard drive clutched in one hand again like a reflex she couldn't unlearn. "Inside," he said. The house smelled like dust and old wood and time. He opened windows to let air move through, checked the back room, the stairs, the small office with the broken desk, the kitchen with its chipped sink and stubborn cabinets. Everything held. Not safe. Not comfortable. But usable. Mia stepped in behind him and closed the door like she needed to control at least one boundary. "What now?" she asked. Gabriel set the burner phone on the table and took the drive from her hand without asking this time. "Now we make it harder for them." "How?" "By making them guess." He plugged the drive into an old laptop he kept for exactly this kind of situation, clean, stripped, no connection to anything that could be traced back to names that mattered. The screen flickered to life. Files opened. Folders nested inside folders like someone had been careful and hurried at the same time. Mia hovered near the table, watching without realizing she was holding her breath. Gabriel scanned the top layer first, dates, route codes, transaction logs, photographs flagged with numbers instead of words. Then he dug deeper. Patterns emerged the way they always did when you stared long enough, repeated drop points, recurring names disguised with slight variations, payments routed through shell companies that all fed into three primary accounts. He recognized one of the account structures. Not the names, but the shape. That was enough. Bishop was right, he said quietly. Mia stepped closer. "About what?" "This isn't small." She let out a hollow breath. "I figured that part out." He didn't respond. Instead, he opened a folder marked with a simple tag, ELK-3. Inside were images. Not many. But enough. He didn't let her see all of them. He angled the screen away when it mattered. She noticed. "Don't," she said. "I need to know what she found." Gabriel paused. Then turned the screen back just enough. Not the worst. Never the worst. But enough truth to anchor the danger in something real. Mia stared. Her face didn't change at first. Then something in her eyes hardened. Not fear. Not anymore. Recognition. "She tried to tell me," Mia whispered. "She said it wasn't just numbers. I didn't understand." Gabriel closed the folder. "You understand now?" She nodded once, slow. "Yeah." Silence filled the room, but it wasn't empty. It carried weight now. Direction. The kind that turned running into something else entirely. The burner phone buzzed on the table. Gabriel picked it up. "Cutter." "Yeah." Cutter's voice came low and steady. "They're moving." Gabriel's gaze shifted toward the window without him realizing it. "Where?" "Two vehicles left the highway 15 minutes ago." Not toward the truck stop. Toward the old logging grid. Mia felt the air change before Gabriel said anything. "They know?" she asked. He didn't answer her yet. "How sure?" he asked Cutter. "Sure enough that I wouldn't bet against it." Gabriel exhaled once. "Time. Maybe an hour. Maybe less." The line cut. Mia stepped closer. "Gabriel." He looked at her. "They're not guessing anymore," she said. "They're tracking." "Yeah." Her throat tightened. "How?" He glanced at the bag Joe had packed, then at the boots, the jacket, the bike. Could be anything. Could be nothing. Could be luck. Or someone told them. The thought landed heavy. Because it was possible. Because it always was. Gabriel shook it off. "Doesn't matter right now." "It does to me." "Later," he said. "Right now we move." Again. There was no complaint in it. Just exhaustion. He nodded. Again. She closed her eyes for a second. Then opened them and nodded back. "Okay." That was all. No argument. No hesitation. She was learning. Gabriel unplugged the drive, pocketed it, and moved through the house fast. Windows closed. Traces minimized. Fire pit out back kicked into life just long enough to burn a strip of cloth from the jacket she had worn earlier, something with her scent on it, and then smothered again. A false trail. Not perfect. But enough to buy minutes if they needed them. Mia watched him work with a kind of quiet intensity. "You've done this before," she said. "Yeah. Helping people like me?" He paused just long enough to answer honestly. "No." That surprised her. "Then what?" He didn't look at her. "Staying ahead of people who don't stop." That was enough. They moved back outside. The air had shifted. Not colder. Sharper. Like the world itself was paying attention now. Gabriel started the bike. "Different route," he said. "Where are we going?" "Safer." "You said that last time. And you're still here." She climbed on behind him without another word. This time, her grip wasn't just fear. It was trust trying to exist in a place it had no right to yet. The Harley roared back to life and cut through the trees, leaving Redding Farm behind like it had never been touched. Half a mile out, Gabriel didn't take the main track. He veered off into a narrow path barely wide enough for the bike, branches scraping against his shoulders, mud kicking up under the tires. The kind of route no one used unless they knew exactly where it led. Behind them, somewhere far enough not to hear yet but close enough to matter, engines moved through the same gray morning. Not searching anymore. Hunting. And this time, they were closer. The trail narrowed until it barely deserved the name, a cut of darker earth between roots and low branches that clawed at Gabriel's shoulders and snapped wet against the bike as he pushed through. He didn't slow more than necessary. Speed here wasn't about getting somewhere faster, it was about staying unpredictable long enough to stay alive. Behind him, Mia adapted without being told. She leaned when he leaned, shifted when he shifted, her grip tight but no longer panicked. Good. Panic got people thrown. Control kept them on the bike. The engine's growl dulled under the canopy, swallowed by trees thick enough to muffle sound and distort direction. Perfect terrain for someone who knew it. Dangerous terrain for someone who didn't. After a mile, the trail broke into a shallow clearing cut by an old service line, a remnant from when the land had been worth more than its silence. Gabriel slowed, cut the engine, and let the bike roll the last few feet before stopping completely. Silence closed in again, heavier this time, as if the woods were listening. Mia stayed still behind him, waiting. Off, he said quietly. She climbed down, boots sinking into damp leaves. Her eyes moved constantly, tree line, ground, sky, back to him. Why are we stopping? Because if they're tracking, they expect us to keep moving. And we're not. Not the way they think. He wheeled the bike by hand into a cluster of brush and angled it so the tracks looked like they continued straight. Then he stepped back and dragged a fallen branch across the real path, scuffing the ground just enough to break the line without making it obvious. Mia watched every movement. You're splitting the trail. I'm lying to it. He glanced at her. Stay close. They moved on foot now, cutting perpendicular to the false track, deeper into the trees. The ground sloped gently downward toward a dry creek bed that would carry scent and sound away if they used it right. Gabriel kept a steady pace, not running, not slow, measured. Every few steps he listened. Not for obvious noise. For wrongness. A bird going quiet. A branch breaking without wind. The small things that told you weren't alone anymore. Mia's breathing steadied as they moved. Not calm. Focused. How long can we stay ahead like this, she whispered. Depends how good they are. And how good you are. He didn't answer that. He didn't need to. The creek bed appeared ahead, a shallow ribbon of stones and damp earth with just enough water to reflect light in broken fragments. Gabriel stepped into it without hesitation and gestured for her to follow. Walk in the water, he said. Where it runs. Step where I step. She did. Careful. Precise. He adjusted his stride slightly to make it easier for her. Small things. They mattered. They followed the creek for several hundred yards, then climbed out on the opposite side where the ground rose into thicker brush. Gabriel paused, listening again. This time, something answered. Faint. Far. But there. An engine. Not one. Two. Moving slow now. Searching. Mia saw the change in his posture immediately. They're close. Closer. Her throat tightened. Did they follow the false trail? Probably. Then why? Because they won't trust it. He looked back toward where they had come from. Men like that don't trust easy answers. A crack echoed faintly through the trees. Not a gunshot. A branch. But not natural. Mia flinched anyway. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. Move, he said. They picked up speed, angling uphill now toward a ridge that cut across the forest like a spine. Higher ground meant visibility. Visibility meant options. The climb burned in Mia's legs, but she didn't complain. She didn't slow. She just kept going, driven by something stronger than fear now, something closer to refusal. Halfway up, Gabriel stopped suddenly and dropped low. Mia mirrored him instantly. What? She whispered. He raised a hand for silence. Then pointed. Through the trees, down the slope they had just crossed, movement. One man. Then another. Not running. Tracking. Heads down, scanning ground, rifles slung but ready. Professional enough to be dangerous. Close enough to matter. Mia's pulse roared in her ears. That's them. Yeah. What do we do? Gabriel's voice stayed calm. We don't let them close the distance. There's two. There's always more. He looked at her, measuring. Then made a decision. Stay behind me. If I say run, you run uphill and don't stop until you hit open ground. Her eyes widened. What about you? I'll catch up. She knew that wasn't a promise. She nodded anyway. The men below moved faster now. They had found something. Not the full trail. But enough. Gabriel stepped out from behind the tree line just enough to be seen. One of the men looked up. Their eyes met across the distance. Recognition. Immediate. The man raised his weapon. Gabriel moved first. He didn't fire. He didn't need to. He shifted position, forcing them to react, to track him instead of the ground. It worked. Both men focused on him now, moving uphill, attention locked. Exactly what he wanted. Go, he said quietly without looking back. Mia didn't hesitate. She turned and ran uphill, branches snapping underfoot, breath tearing through her chest as adrenaline took over. Behind her, voices shouted. Movement accelerated. The hunt had shifted. Now it was personal. Gabriel moved laterally across the slope, keeping himself visible just enough to hold their focus while putting distance between them and Mia's path. He used the terrain, trees, rocks, elevation, to break their line of sight in controlled bursts, never disappearing long enough for them to reset fully. A shot cracked through the trees. Wide. Warning or impatience. Didn't matter. Gabriel kept moving. Another shot. Closer. He dropped behind a fallen trunk, rolled, came up on the other side, already shifting direction. They were good. But they were chasing. And chasing meant reacting. Mia burst through the last line of trees onto the ridge, lungs burning, legs shaking, but still moving. The ground leveled out into a narrow stretch of open land before dropping again on the other side. She didn't stop. She couldn't. Behind her, the forest erupted with movement. Gabriel broke from the tree line seconds later, closing the distance fast. This way, he called, veering toward a narrow cut in the ridge she hadn't noticed. She followed without question. They dropped down the other side into thicker cover, the terrain twisting into a maze of rock and brush that would break any clean pursuit. The gunshot stopped. Not because the threat was gone. Because the angle was. Gabriel didn't slow until they were deep enough that sound died again. Then he stopped, turned, listened. Nothing immediate. But that didn't mean safe. It meant space. Mia bent forward, hands on her knees, gasping for air. They're not stopping, she said between breaths. Gabriel looked back the way they had come. No. She straightened slowly, eyes meeting his. Neither are we. For the first time since the road, there was something in her voice that wasn't fear. It was resolve. Hard-earned. Dangerous. Necessary. Gabriel nodded once. Good. Because the truth was simple now. This wasn't escape anymore. This was survival turning into something else. And somewhere behind them, the men who wouldn't stop were learning the same lesson the hard way. The ridge gave them distance, but not safety. Distance could be measured. Safety could not. Gabriel knew the difference, and by the way Mia moved beside him now, quieter, sharper, watching more than reacting, so did she. The forest changed as they pushed deeper. The trees thinned in places, giving way to stretches of rock and low brush that forced them to choose every step. No more straight lines. No more easy cover. Just terrain that punished hesitation and rewarded awareness. They moved for another 20 minutes without speaking, the silence no longer heavy but functional. Then Gabriel stopped. Not abruptly. Deliberately. Mia slowed beside him, instantly alert. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. His head tilted slightly, listening. Then he pointed ahead. Through the brush, barely visible, a structure. Not a house. Not a cabin. Something older. Stone foundation, partial walls, roof long gone. A ruin. Mia frowned. "What is that?" "Old ranger station," Gabriel said quietly. "Abandoned. Safe." He looked at it for a second longer. Safer than the open. That was enough. They moved toward it carefully, circling wide before approaching. Gabriel checked angles, entry points, lines of sight. No movement. No sound. No sign of recent use. Good. They slipped inside. The air was cooler here, the stone holding the night's dampness. Moss crept along the walls. Broken beams lay scattered across the ground. But it offered cover. And cover was currency. Mia leaned against one of the remaining walls, breathing slower now, her body finally catching up to everything it had been forced through. "How far are they?" she asked. Gabriel stepped to one of the broken openings and scanned the tree line. "Close enough." She nodded, absorbing that. Then after a moment, "You didn't leave me." He glanced back at her. "Wasn't planning to." "You could have." "Yeah." A pause. "Didn't." That simple. That final. Mia looked down at her hands. No shaking this time. Just tension. "My sister." She started, then stopped. Gabriel didn't push. She continued anyway. "She said if I ever got out, I had to make it matter." He turned slightly, giving her his attention. "That drive." She nodded toward his pocket. "It's not just proof. It's everything she died trying to expose." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Then we make it count." She looked at him, searching. "How?" Before he could answer, a sound cut through the trees. Not distant this time. Close. Too close. A voice. Spread out. Mia froze. Gabriel moved instantly, stepping away from the opening, pulling her deeper into the shadow of the stone wall. "They're here," she whispered. "Yeah." The voice came again, clearer now. "He's close. I saw movement." Another answered, lower, sharper. "Then stop talking and move." Gabriel's mind shifted gears. Fast. 3, maybe 4 men. Different positions. Not guessing anymore. They had tracked them clean. Mia looked at him, eyes wide but controlled. "What do we do?" Gabriel's voice stayed low. "We end the chase." She blinked. "What?" "They won't stop," he said. "So we stop them." That landed. Heavy. Final. Mia swallowed. "You mean, I mean they don't walk away from this." Silence pressed in. Not from fear. From understanding. This wasn't running anymore. This was a line. And it had just been crossed. Footsteps outside. Slow. Careful. One of the men passed near the broken wall, just out of sight. Another moved to the opposite side. They were closing in. Gabriel shifted his stance, positioning himself between Mia and the openings. Every movement precise. Controlled. Mia watched him. Not with fear now. With something else. Trust, finally taking root where doubt had been. A shadow moved across the entrance. One of them stepped inside. Weapon raised. Searching. Gabriel didn't wait. He moved fast. Silent. The man barely had time to react before Gabriel closed the distance, disarmed him in one motion, and dropped him hard against the stone. The impact echoed. Outside, voices snapped to attention. Inside. Too late. Gabriel pulled Mia toward the back opening. Now. They moved. Fast. Out the rear, down the slope behind the ruin. Shots rang out behind them, bullets striking stone, dirt kicking up near their feet. Mia ran harder than she thought she could. Because now she understood. There was no more space to hesitate. Gabriel stayed just ahead, guiding, redirecting, never letting her lose momentum. Behind them, the men pushed forward, louder now, more aggressive. The hunt had turned into a chase again. But this time, it was different. Because Gabriel wasn't just running. He was choosing where it ended. They broke through the tree line into another clearing, larger this time, open enough to expose anyone crossing it. Gabriel stopped at the edge, scanning fast. Measuring. Then he turned to Mia. Listen carefully. Her chest heaved, but her eyes locked onto his. Okay. You cross straight through. Don't stop. Don't look back. There's a road on the other side. Cutter should be there. Should be. He will be. She hesitated for half a second. Then nodded. And you? He gave her a look she wouldn't forget. I'll be right behind you. It wasn't a promise. But it was enough. She took a breath. Then ran. Out into the open. Exposed. Vulnerable. But moving. Gabriel turned back toward the tree line just as the first of the men broke through. Their eyes met. And in that moment, everything stopped being uncertain. This was it. The end of the chase. One way or another. Mia didn't look back. Not once. The clearing stretched wider than it had seemed from the edge, every step across it feeling exposed, like the sky itself was watching. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she kept moving. Because stopping meant everything behind her would catch up. And behind her, Gabriel stood his ground. The first man out of the tree line raised his weapon. Gabriel moved before the shot fully formed, closing distance fast, forcing the man off balance. The second man emerged to the left, adjusting aim, but Gabriel shifted position again, dragging both their attention toward him and away from the open field where Mia ran. A shot cracked. Then another. Dirt kicked up near Gabriel's boots, but he didn't slow. He drove forward, striking hard, efficient, breaking rhythm, breaking formation. This wasn't chaos. It was control. One man went down. The second staggered back, trying to recover, trying to reorient. But Gabriel didn't give him space. He pressed. Relentless. Behind him, Mia reached the midpoint of the clearing. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she forced herself to focus. The far tree line. That was all that mattered. Then, an engine. Loud. Close. Her heart jumped. For a split second, fear surged, until she saw it. A bike breaking through the far side. Cutter. He didn't slow as he approached, just angled the bike perfectly, timing it with her movement. Jump, he shouted. Mia didn't hesitate. She pushed the last few steps, grabbed onto him, and he pulled her up in one smooth motion. The bike roared as he turned hard, carrying her out of the clearing and into the cover of the trees beyond. Behind them, the sound of the fight didn't stop. It intensified. Back in the clearing, Gabriel felt the shift the moment Mia reached the other side. The urgency changed. The objective was complete. Now, There was only one thing left. Finish it. The remaining men adjusted, realizing too late that their leverage was gone. This wasn't retrieval anymore. This was survival. Gabriel stepped forward, forcing them back, controlling the space with precision. One lunged. He countered instantly, disarming, dropping him hard. The last one hesitated. Just for a second. But a second was enough. Gabriel closed the distance, ending the fight before it could stretch into something messier. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. The kind that only came when something truly ended. Gabriel stood there for a moment, breathing steady, eyes scanning, making sure. Always making sure. Then he turned. Walked across the clearing. Reached the far side. Cutter was waiting just beyond the trees, engine idling. Mia sat behind him, gripping tight, eyes locked on Gabriel as he approached. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Something else now. Something that had been built piece by piece through every moment since the road. Gabriel mounted his bike without a word. Cutter glanced at him. All done. Gabriel nodded once. Yeah. Cutter smirked slightly. About time. The bikes roared to life again, cutting through the forest, leaving the clearing, and everything it held, behind. They didn't stop until the trees thinned and the road opened up ahead, long and empty and finally free of pursuit. Mia's grip loosened slightly as the tension drained out of her body. Not gone. Not completely. But enough to breathe again. They rode in silence for a while before Cutter slowed and pulled off near an overlook above the valley. Gabriel followed. Engines died. The world settled. Mia climbed off slowly, legs unsteady but holding. She looked out over the valley, wide, open, untouched. No shadows chasing her. No voices calling her back. Just space. Freedom. For the first time, it felt real. Gabriel stepped beside her. Neither spoke for a moment. Then she said it. Quiet. They're not coming anymore. He shook his head slightly. No. She exhaled. Long deep. Like she had been holding that breath for days. Then she turned to him. You didn't just help me. He met her gaze. No. She nodded. You stopped them. A pause. For good. Gabriel didn't respond. Because some things didn't need to be said out loud to be true. Cutter leaned back against his bike, watching the horizon. So what now? Mia looked out at the valley again. Then down at her hands. Then back at Gabriel. Now, we make it matter. He nodded once. That was the only answer that counted. She took a step back. The drive, we get it to the right people. We will. And after that? Gabriel looked at her for a moment. Then out at the road ahead. That part's yours. She smiled slightly. Not because things were easy. But because for the first time, they were possible. She turned, walked back to the bike, and climbed on without hesitation. Gabriel followed. The engines roared back to life, echoing through the open air. And as they rode off, one thing was certain. When she whispered, "They won't stop until they find me." She was right. They didn't stop. But neither did he. And in the end, that's what shocked everyone.